I'd like to call to order the meeting from Monday, December the 10th. If the clerk would please take the roll.
Councilmember Archibald.
Here.
Councilmember Ashford.
Present.
Councilmember Beeden.
Here.
Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Councilmember Pemberton.
Here.
Councilmember Warden.
Here.
Mayor Rep.
Here. You have before you the minutes from the regular meeting of November the 26th. Is there a motion to receive and file?
So move.
Councilmember Ashford, is there a second?
Second.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, is there any additions, deletions, changes? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes will stand as submitted. We do have one presentation tonight. If the clerk would please read that.
Planning and Community Development Director David Haynes and staff members Nicole Smith and Katie Walls will give a presentation on the Pride in Port Huron program accomplishments for 2018.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Once again, we're coming before you to give you the highlights of our grant program through our Community Development Division. We've had a very successful year again, with quite a few homes being impacted and recipients of our grant funds throughout the neighborhoods. Tonight, I'm going to ask that Nicole Smith give you an overview of some of those highlights. Nicole is our Community Development Program Coordinator. She does a fantastic job. And without Nicole and Katie Walls, who is our Community Development Specialist, who unfortunately cannot be here, but between the two of them, they do a fantastic job, and really, they're the work behind all of the effort and all of the success that you've been seeing tonight. With that.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. We are here to give you a brief summary of some of the community development accomplishments this past year. 29 families became homeowners thanks to the Urban Pioneer Program. The Affordable Housing Program is where we buy and rehab homes and then sell them to eligible first-time home buyers in partnership with the Port Huron Neighborhood Housing Corporation. This year, 3 homes have been renovated, 1 has been sold, one is pending, and 1 is for sale. 2 homes are currently in the process of being renovated right now. This is one of the homes here at 1515 7th Street. This property had a fire in 2017 which destroyed the entire 2nd story. The owners wanted to see the property restored, so they donated it to the Housing Corporation. And here we have 733 White Street, which was also renovated. The interior was in very rough shape when we started the project. As you can see, the kitchen before and after. We accepted an offer and are just waiting for a closing date. Here we have 913 Michigan Street that was also renovated and has been sold. These are projects that we currently being renovated right now. 918 Vanderburg will be finished within the next couple of weeks and will be listed on the market for sale. And 1309 15th Street is a project that we just started. We have 5 more properties that we're going to be renovating as well this next year. Now on to our neighborhood preservation programs. 23 homes received funding to make improvements, 1 emergency repair grant, and 1 rental rehab grant. Our Project Brush Up program was a huge success this year, as 68% of the vouchers were redeemed. Here we have 1209 10th Avenue. You can see that the improvements of siding and a roof made a huge difference here. And here at 2102 Elmwood, we put a new roof on, vinyl siding, and porch repairs. And here at 1610 17th Street, improvements included a new roof, paint, and porch repair. And as you can see here at 520 13th Street, the improvements of a new roof and vinyl siding made a huge difference. These are great programs that are changing neighborhoods. So we would like to say thank you to all of our partners who continue to revitalize Port Huron, and to City Council for continuing and supporting these programs every year.
Thank you. And thank you to your department, you and your department, for everything you do to make these programs work.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the council that has any questions? Any questions?
Madam Mayor, if I could real quick, I just want to thank Nicole. Every year we are audited by the feds to ensure that we are executing these grants and administering them in a proper fashion. I cannot stress to you the amount of paperwork that goes into these federal funds and fiduciating these federal funds. And every single year Nicole comes out on top and as a role model among her peers in community development around the state. So I just want to say, Nicole, thank you for a job well done, and it is to being noticed by higher-ups.
Thank you.
I think I was acknowledging Councilman Perez first.
I guess I only have one question here. I visited the lobby again today, and I noticed one of the houses we've marked down a little bit on the price range and stuff. And with that and the other properties, how negotiable are we with these properties?
We're very negotiable. When we list the properties for sale, we're already at 5% below the appraised value, so we already list them at a discount. It's just, once they've been on the market for about 3 months, we look at price adjustments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Ashford.
Thank you. That was one of mine too. Thank you, Councilmember Harris. The voucher program, you said that did really well. How many did we give in the first place? How many vouchers were there?
73 vouchers were redeemed out of 108.
It's not bad.
It was a huge increase from last year. Only 43% were redeemed last year compared to 68% this year.
Wow. What do you think made the difference?
Just, I think it's our code enforcement officers being out in the neighborhood.
Okay. So there's a connection to
Yes,
help
yes.
reinforce that. Okay. And then lastly, if people are interested in getting on this, what's your communication? Do you have a communication plan that you get out there, the word out there, so they could, make application for these houses?
Yes, as far as the grant programs go, yes. We have brochures that are available in the city clerk's office and on our floor. A lot of it is word of mouth, and then a lot of the referrals to the grant programs come from our officers that are out in the field, talking to the individuals, referring them to our programs.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to public comment. If there's anyone in the audience who wishes to address the City Council this evening, please come forward to the podium, and you have 4 minutes. Please give us your name.
My name's Alex Matkin. I'm here to address the new faces in the room. Before I start, I just want to comment that I know for a fact that 7th Street property that you just talked about was offered to the person that lives next door, and the city blocked the sale. This Port Huron Pride program is a scam. The Pride in Port Huron program sets a dangerous standard. I'd also like to talk about the consent agreement, Resolution 18-148. You all are about to extort about $11,000 from 40 people that live in our community using the standards set with this program. 3 or so years ago, my partner and I bought a house here because we chose to move back from North Carolina. It was a conscious decision. While we were in the process of fixing it up and moving in, the Administrative Hearings Bureau and the thugs in the Blight Department started harassing us. And with the help of our corrupt city manager and a blasé city council, they filed liens and tried to steal our house. When we came to raise the issue, you sent the same thug, one Joel Woods, to intimidate me. He accused me of making threatening hand gestures in city council meeting after I talked about the consensus process. He also stated in his reports that he did measure our grass. He did. In all of my Freedom of Information Act requests, I have found nothing to substantiate that. I also have documented and shared the footage of my dispute and verification that we were within compliance. He also, as well as one George Sheridan, stated that I made threats, including saying that I would shoot the lawnmowers who came, as per your administrative order. I do not own a gun, and I have footage of me stating that I would sue them. Furthermore, the officer Wood made inappropriate, suggestive comments to my wife. It also reported by other citizens in our neighborhood that he was caught watching them from their backyard while they were in the bathroom. George Sheridan made a smoochy face at me that showed me that he has no respect for my individuality, my agency, and my citizenship. I demand that Officer Wood answer to the discrepancies in his report, and you all evaluate and convene a citizen's review of the Blight Department and Administrative Hearings Bureau, their conduct, the protocol, and all their documentation that they use. After we stated that we would not be paying you all to extort from us, you just fudged some documentation in the tax bill and charged us twice for our sewer. When we came here to complain, asked for resolution and consideration, you just shuffled papers and told us that you don't have to respond. This is not a conversation, were the words. Our complaint still has not been addressed, and the Port Huron Corporation still operates in these capacities with impunity. If the situation with Phil Reisner is not a glaring example of this municipality's corruption, all the way down to your sponsorship of vandalism of his property and public ad hominem attacks by James, government doesn't bring prosperity, freedom does, freed, to James, I'm just going to put this sign up, Freed, trying to change the area's definition of political signs and amend freedom of speech in response to some of our efforts to bring attention to the injustice and corruption present here in this room. The only way we have at our disposal is making those signs. So just to comment on my experience as a resident in Port Huron, I have to say it went from being an opportunity and a challenge to it has been a nightmare. I live in fear of loud noises and knocks at my door. I can't deal with people directly. I called you to ask for consideration, and you sent people with guns to my house to enforce your standards of decency. The bus is still shut down for church. There's still no way for a pedestrian to get to the post office safely.
Macomb, your time is up.
And the blue streetlights still keep me up at night.
Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to address the City Council this evening? Please come forward and give us your name.
I'm Cindy Hoska, and I live on Jenkinson Street in Port Huron. And one thing that I was concerned about, and I have received a personal kind of guarantee from Mr. Freed, that our leaves will be taken care of, so I'm not going to go into the leaf thing, because you've already had some discussion on the leaf thing a month ago. But I do have a question, and James and I kind of talked about this a while ago. Jenkinson Street has no streetlights, has never had streetlights, ever. It's a 3-block long street, which is not very long, but it is a residential street. And we need that kind of security. In comparison, it's the end of White Street. It's off 24th. It's a block and a half long. They have 5 streetlights for a block and a half. We're 3 blocks long, we have nothing. And we never have had anything. And I need some direction as to how we can pursue this so that we can get something safe, because it's
Mr.
very,
Freed is writing
very
this
dark.
down, so he will check it out.
We have been working with DT, I think I met in your living room, gosh, how long was that, spring?
I know.
I think I had a jacket on. So what we'll do is we're transitioning our leadership in our DPW. When we begin our spring project list, we're looking at Jenkinson Street. It becomes getting DTE to drop it on, it's typically our streetlights work at their every intersection. Jenkinson's is different because there's not an intersection for a long way, and so it appears very dark, but it is dark. It is something that's on our plan.
Cool.
So.
I'm so glad to hear that. Now, how do I keep following up on such things? Because I know they take a long period of time.
So I will have someone reach out to you tomorrow and get you some contact. It'll be me.
There you go.
I love it.
If there's one thing I know about that street, I'll take care of it myself there.
Yeah, he
So.
promises, he says it's his favorite street.
It's my favorite street.
You never know, though, I mean, maybe he says that to all the streets.
Hold him to it.
I'll be back, you know I will.
Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to address the City Council this evening? If you do, please come forward, and you have 4 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Administration. I'm Sharon Bender, South Boulevard, Port Huron. 2 things that I would like to comment on. The first is not on the agenda, but still deserves citation, and that is our thanks for having a new store in our neighborhood. We are so grateful that we now do have a store that sells meat and produce. Thank you so much for all the people who were responsible for that. Thank you. We really appreciate it. And the other issue came before the Planning Commission this past week, and it's in regard to Be Warm and my full support for their going on with their project. Thank you on behalf of all the people that we work with who are homeless. Thank you on behalf of all the people that continue to need it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the council this evening? Seeing no one, I'll declare public comment closed. We will move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, is there a second?
Support?
Councilmember Pemberton?
Mayor Rep,
Yes.
I
Councilmember
have
Warren.
item number 5, Resolution 18-145 removed.
Okay. We'll take that one off and we'll take the vote.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes. The items on the consent agenda, received and filed notification that Keely Baraboo has been reappointed by the city manager to the Port Huron Housing Commission with a term to expire on December 19th, 2023, and Brenda DeBell, who has been appointed to fill a vacancy with a term to expire December 19th, 2022. Approve the Zoning Board of Appeals appointment of Peter Epley to fill an alternate vacancy with a term to expire July 1, 2021. Confirm the mayor's reappointment of Daniel Casey, Carrie Hepting, Kirk Kramer, and Catherine Pertnell to the Tax Increment Finance Authority with terms to expire September 14, 2022. And confirmed and approved single lot special assessments for fines, assessments, and/or cost of removing blight, blighting factors, and/or causes of blight, as well as the abatement of nuisances. With that, we will move to from the city manager. Number 1, please.
Receive and file the comprehensive annual financial report for the year ended June 30th, 2018.
Could we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Councilmember Ashford, is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Harris and Mr. Freed.
Madam Mayor and Council, we have our auditors here today who are going to do a quick presentation. Just for the community at large, if you would like to view our annual audit for your Christmas reading, you can download it at porthuron.org/open-government. This will be uploaded tomorrow morning, and I know people wait every year to get this thing uploaded so they can get to it, so it'll drop tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Very happy to be here tonight. My name is Lisa Mineta. I'm a partner with Planta Moran in our governmental auditing practice, and with me is Crystal Simpson, who oversees the audit on a day-to-day basis of the City of Port Huron. So we're very pleased tonight to be here to present the results of the June 30, 2018 financial statement audit. Crystal will go through some graphs, so we will not be reading all 196 pages of this lovely document. And really, that is because our job is not to prepare this document. Everything in here is prepared by your finance department under the guidance of Ed Brennan, and our job is to spend several weeks auditing the information in it in order to come up with, or to be able to give our opinion on whether this document is in accordance with all accounting rules and disclosure requirements that are applicable to a local government such as the City of Port Huron. So the result of all of our tests and all of that effort is that we have issued an unmodified opinion, which is a good thing. That is essentially a clean opinion, meaning that everything is materially correct and that these numbers can be relied upon for your decision-making process, and they're in accordance with the applicable rules and regulations, which, as we've talked about over the past several years, are constantly changing. GASB has been very prolific in releasing new standards, and so it is a lot to keep up with, but everything in this report is properly stated in accordance with those standards. We did also provide a letter of comments that includes an overview on the audit process and also some legislative updates, which we do encourage you to review. In addition to GASB being prolific, the state of Michigan has also had a lot of new requirements and reporting, especially around legacy costs, and a lot of that is discussed in our separate letter. Just from an overview perspective, and Crystal will get into a more visual representation of it, but really what struck me in preparing for tonight and going back over the financial results is just seeing the consistency over the few years that we'll present, and that is a good thing to see after the many years where things were very much headed in a bad direction in terms of revenues and a lot of concern around cost increases, which is not to say that there's nothing to be concerned about anymore. It's just good to see things kind of being a little bit more predictable in the near term and seeing marginal increases in revenues over the past few years. So that's a good trend to see. However, as we've talked about in the past and as we talk about with all of our communities in Southeast Michigan, concern still looking at the rising cost of funding legacy obligations is something that will continue to be a challenge, and in terms of the budget process, and also just turning attention to capital needs and infrastructure, which is something that most communities have had to put on hold and delay projects, and now are seriously looking in long-term budgets for how to work those back into the budget process and meet those needs. So with that, I will turn it over to Crystal to take us through the slides.
All right, so as Lisa mentioned, the CAFR is now up to almost 200 pages, so we find it's helpful to look at the graphs. It will show the current year information as well as some trend information from previous years, which is helpful. And as we go along, if you have any questions, just let me know and we can visit those. This first graph shows your general fund revenue for 2014 through 2018. The total revenue was about $22.8 million for 2018. Approximately $13.2 million of that, or 58%, is tax revenue, so you're highly driven from that revenue stream. Tax revenue did increase from 2017. It was related to an increase in property taxes of about $384,000, offset by a decrease in your income taxes of about $181,000. It is important to keep in mind that due to Proposal A, your increases in property taxes are limited to the lesser of 5% or inflation. And typically inflation has been less than 3% if you look back historically, so you won't see it increase as much as it decreased in the times when the taxable values were decreasing. The second largest revenue source for you is the federal and state sources. You can see that was about $4.8 million. Of that, $3.6 was state shared revenue. That increased about $85,000 actually from 2017. And as Lisa mentioned in the letter of legislative items, the state is once again budgeting an increase in that state shared revenue. So hopefully people will continue to get out and spend, and those property tax or those sales tax collections, you'll see an increase going forward. This graph shows general fund expenditures for 2014 through 2018. The total expenditures were about $22.7 million. As you can see, public safety is the most significant expenditure at about $14.4 million. And that's about 64% of your total general fund expenditures. There was an increase of about $444,000, primarily related to increases in salaries and fringes. As Lisa mentioned, and we'll see on a following pension slide, those legacy costs continue to increase. The annual required contributions for pension continue to increase, so that's why you've seen the shift of the increase in the expenditures. The second largest is general government of about $3.4 million. That increased about $160,000 from last year. Again, that was primarily related to salaries and those fringes as well. This graph shows the revenues, the expenditures, as well as the transfers, and then the fund balance for general fund from 2014 through 2018. Fund balance at the end of June was about $4.7 million, and that was about 21% of your current year expenditures. So what that means is if the city stopped generating revenue, you'd be able to go about 2.5 months on your fund balance. And the MDFOA best practice would be about 2 months as a minimum for fund balance, so you are over that best practice threshold. This graph shows a broader perspective, so it shows all of your governmental funds. So this would be everything other than like sewer, water, the land purchase fund. It's all of the governmental funds. And it shows the fund expenditures and fund balance for those. The non-spendable fund balance This is just funds that have been paid out, but you won't see the benefit of it until the following year. So prepaid items, you pay ahead for your health insurance for employees, but you don't really get the benefit until the following year. Some restricted fund balance. So that's third parties putting a restriction on it for you. So it's the roads, money, grants that you have to spend for a particular purpose. Rubbish collections can only be spent for rubbish, those kind of things.
So all that's designated?
Yes, so the restricted, the dark blue is restricted.
Okay.
And then the remaining portions are either assigned or committed for purposes by council, or you see that unassigned fund balance, which is just shown in general fund. And the total of those is about $6.5 million at the end of June. It was up about $31,000 from 2017. So as Lisa mentioned, once again, you did see a slight increase in your fund balance, which is good.
Excuse me.
Yes.
You stay on that page. Just
Sure.
flip the top line up. Oh, right there, yeah, the expenditure, the thin line up there around 34 million. What is that line across the top?
That line is the expenditures, so it's just showing, it's kind of remained stable. Between the two, I think between the 2 years, there was only about $100,000 fluctuation in the expenditure lines. So that is remaining pretty stable. That's because you're watching your spending, trying to keep it under control. But again, there is a slight increase due to those increased pension contributions and other fringes. We know healthcare keeps going up with the premiums, so those have went up, but you have controlled the other spending to keep it in line.
Would that be,
And that represents the general funds expenditures in addition to the roads funds,
Yes,
capital
all of
projects
those.
funds, all of them combined, is the 33.
okay, thanks.
So the next few graphs are focusing on the long-term perspective. You're not used to seeing that on a regular basis. You look at the budget to actual statements. This is showing the long-term view. So the first set of statements, if you were to look in the CAFR, it presents it on a long-term model. So this brings in all of your governmental funds, but also adds long-term assets, which are your capital assets, the buildings, those kind of things. But it also adds those long-term liabilities. So for you, you do have a net OPEB, or retiree health care liability, and the net pension liability to fund those future promised benefits. So you can see on the right-hand side, those liabilities, the OPEB liability or retiree health care makes up about $37.6 million of the total, and that's about 37%, so that's a large number. And then the pension is about $54.7 million, or 54% of that total. So as we talked about, at the state, the legacy costs have been a huge topic of discussion, trying to fund whatever you can as you go into those plans to help bring up the level of funding. The next graph shows the same information, but it's for what we call the business type activities. So this would be for the sewer and water funds. And you can see for these funds, they're more capital asset driven because you are providing the service of sewer and water to residents. So the liabilities in this fund are a little less significant. So the retiree health care is about $10.6 million. I say less significant, that's still a large number, but in relation to the total. And it's 11% of the total liabilities. And then the pension is about $15.4 million, or about 16% of the total. So again, they're large legacy costs, but for these funds, it's a smaller piece of the pie when it comes to the liabilities. And then this final graph just brings it all together for the entire city. So again, the retiree health care is about $48.2 million, or 24% of the total liabilities, and the pension is $70.1 million, or 35% of the total liabilities. One thing that does impact the budget, though, is the pension required contributions. So this graph shows the actual contributions from 2014 through 2018. And then every year, the actuarial valuation that you get provides projected required contributions into the future. So you can see for each of the orange bars there, going into the future, there is going to be a significant increase, and that will impact your budget on a go-forward basis. So just keep that in mind as you're going through that process. And this is the minimum required, so anything additional that you'd want to contribute would be over and above that projected number. This graph shows the water fund. On the left-hand side, this is what the presentation you'll see in the actual CAFR. It's what's called the full accrual basis. Water and sewer are on a long-term view. You can see on this basis, your revenue does exceed your expenses for the year. The teal bar is higher than the orange bar. However, if you look at it on a short-term view, so the right-hand column, you can see that the expenditures actually exceed the revenue. So because of debt payments and capital outlay purchases, on that left-hand side, those all flow through the balance sheet. But on the right-hand side, it's, okay, what would we look like if we had to expense those items? So on the modified accrual basis, your expenditures actually exceed your revenue. So again, when you're looking at setting rates, I'm sure you take all of this into account, but on looking at it at two different views, you do get two different pictures. This is the same data, but for the sewer fund. Again, on the left-hand side, you can see that revenue does exceed expenses, which is good. That's what we look at to see if you're charging enough to cover the full service of providing that to the residents. And then on the right-hand side, the expenditures do exceed the revenue, again, because of debt payments and the capital outlay. Are there any questions on any of the graphs?
Any questions from council?
Could you, Mayor Rep, could you go back to page 9 again and give me the story on that again?
Yeah, so the governmental funds that you're used to seeing, like general fund, major local streets, those are more on a cash-in, cash-out type basis with some minor items that are accrued at year end. The water and sewer fund are more presented more like a business. So when you're looking on the left-hand side, it is taking into account, you're capitalizing any assets that you're purchasing, so those go into the balance sheet. You do depreciate them over time as you're using them. And then any debt is recorded, and the balance sheet is debt versus the payouts. When you make those debt payments, you're going to take it out of cash and take it out of debt on the balance sheet. You don't see it flow through the revenue and expense side. Whereas on the right-hand side, we're just saying, okay, what if this was more like the general fund? What would that fund look like? More of a cash-in, cash-out type basis.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Mayor Rep?
Councilmember Warden.
Just a couple of questions, because we just got the full audited report here. And I think your graphs show it, I just want to double check.
Sure.
The total as of June 30th, 2018,
What page are you on?
page 29.
Okay.
The net OPEB liability of 48 million, and net pension liability of 70 million.
Right.
Is that the 118 million on, you mentioned on what? See those two? Page 29. Right over to the, it says total government net position.
Yeah, I see those. Where on the graphs?
Liabilities.
Where did you see the 118?
No, on the graphs, I thought you, can you show me where that 118 million, I thought you said it was less. Yeah.
So basically, when you're looking at page 29, the governmental activities, that's the first column of what you see up there. So it's 37.6 million for the retiree health care, and the net pension liability is 54.7 million on that right-hand side.
So those two numbers that you just said, 54 and 30-something, but this book says 70 and 48, what's the difference?
No. So this is business type, so it's the second column, and then this final graph is the total column together.
Okay, so all the bricks and all the
Yes.
squiggly lines in gray up there is 118 million?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
So that's combining
Yes.
both
Yep.
the governmental activities and all of the business type and taking them all together.
So basically, it took one column at a time, and then this is the total together.
Okay. And one other thing on this, the annual, the report, the net, I usually kind of monitor this and look at this report just overall, and the net assets now, minus all the liabilities for the city of Port Huron, is that at 57,889,000? It's on page 20. Am I reading that right?
Yes, yes. So that, again, that's combining all of the
Assets
all of the
minus those-
assets minus all of the liabilities for both the governmental and the business type on
Yeah, the
that
to-
full accrual basis.
Yeah, the total of the city.
Yep.
And on
Yes.
page 23, what shows the year before, and even the prior at the very bottom, it says net position at the beginning of the year for 2017 on the far right. That would have been year end of 16. The net amount was 100,
That would-
net assets are 107 million.
Yes, you did have to implement a new accounting standard this year for the retiree healthcare
Yep.
unfunded liability, so that did decrease your overall net position.
Yep, so we have those liabilities, but now the starting point at the end of the year was 106 million net. So now we're down to 57 million net assets with full reflection of all the liabilities, including the unfunded liabilities.
Correct.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Freed.
Again, going back to the GASB standards, it's been a 3-year rollout between GASB, the first rule, GASB 68, I believe it was, or so GASB 68, which required us to include our pension liability on our balance sheet, and then GASB 74 or 72? 75. Pardon me.
We like
The
numbers.
GASB 75, which required the OPEB liability. So a lot of people ask, how did our unfunded liabilities get so large without anyone noticing? It's because we never had to report them on our audit. They were never reported on the audit for all these years across every municipality in the state of Michigan. So it hasn't been until the new GASB reporting requirements that this has really come to light on a statewide issue where people are putting this on the balance sheet now and realizing this was never here before, although it actually was. We didn't lose
Yeah.
$38 million in a year. It's just now we're reporting it on the balance sheet. And so I think that's important to know for people to see that the difference is we've always had that liability, but now it'll be further exposed. Another thing as well is we're going through a valuation with MERS. We did in 2016. We'll have a new valuation in 2018. We expect that sometime in June. We also have a new OPEB valuation coming out. So we can expect these numbers to rise. Hence why I've been in Lansing for the last 3 years trying to lobby for some reforms.
Any questions? Camila? Oh, were you done?
Oh, yeah, I mean, whether we showed it on a reported audit statement or not, we still had that liability, and now they're forcing us to show it. So this is the real net position as we stand right as of June 30th of 2018. And this includes all of our capital assets, our roads, our buildings, and everything for assets.
Yes.
And then all of our, so I appreciate that clarification.
That statement.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, one quick thing. One thing with the valuation as well of our assets is we're different in the private sector. When I have an MBA and working in the private sector, when you have a valuation, you evaluate a company, you look at the valuation of assets, a plant, a press, things that are the assets the company has. If you're in the private sector, you can sell a plant, you can sell a printing press, you can sell these assets to liquidate when you need cash. Our assets are not things that we can sell if we need cash. We can't sell streets. We can't sell water mains and sewer mains, but those are factored into our assets. So I don't want the citizens of Port Huron thinking we have $50-some million in cash or liquidable items we can just hawk off if we need money. That is very different from the government versus private sector. So, people look at the assets and say, well, the city's got $50 million in assets. We don't need any more, why are we doing a public safety millage? Well, I can't sell the street.
Right.
There's not really a buyer out there for it.
They are not cash-generating
So
assets.
very distinct difference between the private sector.
Yes. Yep.
Councilmember Ashford, did you have a question?
Yeah, did the new legislation as far as the unfunded liability have any impact on your audit? Or you're not familiar with it? Senate Bill
There is
1?
new reporting that your finance department has been having to do related to the funding thresholds. So it's 60% for pension and 40% for retiree healthcare. So they've had to disclose some additional information to the state reporting on that.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that would not impact our audit, but that is a requirement that the city would have to meet.
Okay, thank you. And I'd just like to commend you. I always can appreciate, and certainly it's really understandable when you do your executive reporting here, you're upfront. It gives you the bottom line collectively in summary fashion, and explains your graphs and everything. So everything that you reported on tonight, it's right here, and it goes more into detail. So thank you. Even though we just got it, I just had the opportunity to scan it.
Sure.
But I certainly appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate working with the city.
Any other questions from the council?
Just thank you to Ed and Bobby and the entire finance team. Ed's been here late at night, early in the morning, on the weekends, putting this out. But the good news is, because it's an unqualified opinion, Ed gets to keep his job. So, Merry Christmas, Ed.
Congratulations, Ed.
Yes. I would like to echo that, too. Thank you for a job well done, and thank you for the audit. I agree with Councilmember Ashford. When you have the summary, and that's easier to, rather than reading 180-some pages, it's nice to be able to go through that and get a good picture. So thank you.
All right, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening.
We have a motion to receive and file.
So move.
We already have the motion.
Oh.
We've been talking for a
I
while.
thought so.
I was just going to
Oh.
say, we have a motion, let's take
Oh,
the
okay.
vote.
And I was sitting here thinking, I think we moved it.
Oh, no, it's been moved.
All right.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes. We'll move to number 2.
Receive and file the quarterly financial report for the 3-month period ending September 30th, 2018.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, is there a second?
Support.
Councilmember Ashford, is there any discussion?
Can we get any highlights, the status of it?
Yeah, real quickly, the report will show you that we're tracking to be on budget. This is the first quarter of the year, still 3 more left. But so far, things are looking to be on track. And some of the bills you see will, like a healthcare bill or an annual expense, which is like you pay at the first part of the year rather than the second part of the year, that can skew some of the items. But overall, operationally, we're coming in on budget, if not under budget.
Good. Good. Any other questions? We will take the vote.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris? Yes. Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes. Item 3.
Approving amendments to the 2018-2019 budget.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Councilmember Pemberton, is there a second?
Second.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald.
Madam Mayor, this will be our 3rd year of paying an additional $500,000 into our pension fund. We took a break during the last fiscal year because, well, the 2 last fiscal years because, one, our public safety millage hasn't kicked in, and so we were running about a $700,000 deficit 2 years ago, and then it takes a year for the millage to actually kick in, but we have pledged to pay down our unfunded liabilities. So in the last 4 years, 4 years, this will be the 4th year, we have paid 3 of the last 4 years, we've paid an additional $1.5 million. For every dollar we invest today, that's $2 that our children will have to build their own future. So again, very proud that we were able to do this. Because of our budget is tracking, our revenues are tracking, and we're under budget, we're able to do this in this fiscal year. But this was a commitment and a goal of the mayor and council during your work session, and so we have brought that once again to fruition.
So in lay terms, what would this mean as far as moving here?
It means out of about $100 million of unfunded liabilities, we are now $500,000 less of unfunded liability. But if you put that on a capitalization schedule, so as we earn investments on this over a 21-year horizon, it hopefully will be more than that.
Better position.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion from council?
Mayor Rep.
Councilmember Warden.
Yeah, so this, again, our budget, this is for the 2018-19 budget for starting July 1st through of 18 through June 30th. Your budget did not have this in there initially, and then you had like a projected surplus of about $200,000. And now I have a couple questions of the timing of this now is midterm, and I know we just submitted a corrective action plan. I think we voted on it back in October. Has there been any communication from the state treasury or regarding that corrective action plan that kind of like behooves us to do this now?
A couple points. One, when we make a budget, it's before we actually send out property tax bills, before we actually have receivables coming in. We now feel confident in our numbers that we can afford to do this. Secondly, MERS will conduct its valuation beginning this spring, and we'll receive that report in June. We would like to have every dollar we possibly can funded into that valuation. So we're going to send this check to MERS to invest it in the pension fund so that can be calculated into the next valuation. So that is the reason why we are doing it mid-year. Treasury is backlogged with so many cities having this. We have not heard the status of that from Treasury. I expect no issue with it, though, based on my conversations with the Treasurer's office.
Okay. So if is this going to eat into that $200 and some thousand surplus that you projected?
No.
So this is an additional, so this fiscal year, the way it's tracking, if we didn't if we knew about this, we'd be at 700,000 and something for a surplus?
Hopefully, but again, next year as the ARCs increase, we always.
I'm just saying this fiscal, the one we did in
Correct, but
July
when our
1st.
multi-year budgeting,
Yep.
you'll note that it tightens up in the out years of 24 and 36. So if we're going to make that additional payment, it's important that we do it now in this fiscal year and mid-year before the valuation, based on the multi-year budgeting when you adopted it.
So again, this projected surplus is still 200-some thousand?
Correct.
Okay, after this contribution. And is there any, we currently have, on this current budget that we're in, we took the phase-in, approach for making the payments for the required monthly minimums or the required annual minimums. Does this 500,000 get us to where it would have been if we chose the no phase-in annual amount? Or
I'd
we
have to
still-
look on that, we'd be close, but again, the reason why we do the phasing in is because we are making budgets. So if we didn't use the phase-in model, we would adjust the growth and the losses on a 3-year horizon, we'd have to be budgeting amendment in the middle of the year. You wouldn't be able to budget. So that's why we do phasing. That's pretty typical on pension funds. But I think this pretty gets us close. I think so.
Maybe like 100-something less.
But also remember, if the market does really good, for instance, last year, we did 13% when it was only anticipated to do 7 3/4. The phasing this year would actually be less. And so that's why you do the phasing, because it would be unfair to, it was a really good year, so we're paying less, and then the next year it was not so good year, so we pay more. It would really be detrimental to the pension beneficiaries and the actives to, on the good years, pay less, when that we should be paying the phase-in model even on the bad years. So the phase-in is not so we pay less, it's so that even on the good years, we pay more than you would on the bad years. So last year when we did 13%, if we were not using the phase-in model, we would have paid less than we would this year, and that would be unfair to the pension
Yeah,
fund.
I think, isn't the phase-in option going to be, is it still going to be next, they're going to continue that next year, or is it no phase-in available?
I believe it will
was
be
a-
continued.
Yeah, I thought the understanding was it was 3-year entry, 5-year? Okay. Well, I'm a big supporter of this, and you've heard it from me for 2 years in budget sessions and wanting to contribute as much as we can to make a good faith effort. So, and again, the budget being this point in the fiscal year, that you feel comfortable for 500,000, and we're still going to be able to facilitate, hopefully come in under budget for this fiscal year end in June 30th. I strongly support putting this money into the pension fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion?
No, I was just mentioning that James, that he was talking about the corrective action. This actually positioned us a little bit better
Yep.
in those terms.
It also provides me the political fodder I need to go to Lansing tomorrow and tell them we've done everything we
Leverage,
can.
Yeah. So
Yep.
they're looking at what we're doing, and as a matter of fact, the new Senate bill actually alluded to that, to what we're doing in between time and trying to do corrective action in terms of our unfunded liabilities.
It was interesting when I testified before the House and the Senate that Port Huron was used as a role model
Yes.
for communities who acknowledged a problem and have been moving swiftly to correct it. And then they're realizing that there are some things outside of our ability to cope with without outside intervention. So hopefully in the next 2 days we'll have some answers.
I think I heard that from your counterparts. So proud of you right there.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Any other discussions? We will take the vote on item 3.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden? Yes. Mayor Rep?
Yes. Item 4, please.
Accepting the proposal from Sutphen Corporation in the amount of $820,738.73 for an SL-75 Quint fire apparatus for use by the fire department.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Everybody.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, supported by Councilmember Pemberton, I do believe. And Mr. Freed?
Yes, Madam Mayor, Council. If you thought Chief Main Guy was expensive, wait till you meet Chief Nicholson here. So he's going to give us a public presentation. Many of you have been briefed one-on-one in briefings on this purchase. This is something that we've been looking at for a couple of years, but I've asked Chief Nicholson to give a presentation more for the public to understand the need and the validation for this purchase. So Chief Nicholson, if you could present that.
You were not going to get a truck in here?
He tried driving it to the door. He tried.
Please move over just a bit to the left. Mayor, Council, Fire Department's requesting purchase of a 75-foot aerial Quint fire apparatus to supplement our fleet, and I'll speak to the conditions that I believe necessitate the purchase. First, some background. Our current fleet capability consists of a 2012 KME Aerial Cat. This apparatus was purchased in 2012 with a 2011 FEMA AFG grant. We were responsible for approximately 10% of the total purchase price. It features a 109-foot steel aerial ladder, has a 500-gallon water tank, 2,000-gallon per minute fire pump. In addition to the aerial device, it also carries an assortment of ground ladders that aren't normally carried on any of our engine companies. It has a tandem axle rear, and that is necessitated by the weight of the vehicle, 74,000 pounds. So it is the equivalent of a capital ship. One other note, its travel height. It's 11 feet 8 inches tall, plus or minus 2 inches. That means, despite the fact that all 3 firehouses feature 12-foot doors, it only fits in 2 of our firehouses, and that is barely. We've had some issues with this vehicle. Back in 2017, it was returned to Roanoke, Virginia for a swivel bearing replacement. And after that, it had to go back to Nescahoning, Pennsylvania, the home of the manufacturer, where it was gone for about 6 months for a partial refurbishment at the manufacturer's expense. It's under warranty currently. It was a special warranty extended to us for 2 years. That warranty expires in July of 2020. Next slide. This is important to note. This is a map of the city, and it was gleaned from tax assessment, so there are some buildings missing on it, and I apologize for the lack of clarity. These are all the structures in the city that are either greater than 26 feet in height or over 2 stories. And that figure is important because when the ladder truck is out of service, we are restricted to a single 30-foot ladder in the city, and that the effective reach of a 30-foot ground ladder is 26 feet. The rest of the engine companies only can carry 24-foot 2-section ladders. So in that case, we are out of business for roof access or rescue of trapped occupants until the arrival of a mutual aid company. And this is a little bit better detail of the situation downtown. You note how many buildings exceed our maximum reach of ground ladders. So the City Fire Department's proposal is for the purchase of a Quint apparatus. And we're looking at it would be a model year 2020 Sutphen SL75. Features a 75-foot aluminum aerial ladder. It would have 480 gallons of water in addition to 20 gallons of Class A foam. 2,000 gallon per minute fire pump. It carries a Quint complement of ground ladders, which is very similar to a full ladder company assignment of ladders. Because of the weight, it can ride on a single axle rear because the weight is over 25,000 pounds less than our current apparatus. Travel height, because of the mid-mount configuration, is 10 feet 1 inch, plus or minus 1 or 2 inches. So no matter what our plans are in the future as far as positioning this apparatus, it can fit in all the stations. With this apparatus, with delivery in 2020, we will have a 5-year full warranty. So this vehicle, with the exception of consumables like tires, brakes, etc., will be under warranty till 2025. And we're looking at a 13 to 14 month build time, which puts it in service the early part of 2020. Several municipalities around us have this exact model in service and run them frontline. City of Warren, City of Midland just took delivery, and Midland is one of our comparables, and the City of Dearborn. And the obligatory action shots, but you'll see, unfortunately, the clarity is not the best, but in the bottom left-hand position, you'll see the limitations of a ground ladder as opposed to an aerial device. And you can see in the picture on the right, this is Midland's apparatus being pump tested at the builder's facility. we'll have the same sort of options on our apparatus as far as a remotely operated nozzle. I went down to the plant again in August to take a look at some vehicles that were completed as well as vehicles in production. One of the advantages of the mid-mount configuration, in addition to the travel height, is the ability of the pump operator to operate the aerial device. So in the left-hand picture is the master pump panel, and just to his or her operator's left, he can deploy the outriggers and operate the aerial ladder all from one position. With our current apparatus, which is a rear mount configuration, requires 2 operators minimum. And just an overview of the operating costs of the lifespan of this apparatus. We have a lighter curb weight, 45,000 pounds versus 74,000 pounds. It's expensive to stop, it's expensive to take off, and it's expensive to turn, and that's exacerbated by vehicle weight. This particular apparatus features a stainless steel body. Most of our apparatus are aluminum bodies. Stainless holds up much better in the salt conditions we have here in the state of Michigan. Another advantage, this particular apparatus has an aluminum, non-painted, huck-bolted aerial. The aerial sections aren't welded. They're huck-bolted, similar to a aircraft construction. So we'll never have to worry about weld failures. It's a very simple operating system as far as its electrical system. Most of our apparatus are multiplex, which involves multiple computers to operate a single function like a brake light. This is point-to-point electrical. So in 10 years, when we have wear and tear on our electrical system, it'll be very easy to diagnose and solve any sorts of problems we have. Again, low amperage draw LED lighting throughout the truck, and what that does is allows us to eliminate an onboard AC generator. And we've had 2 failures of generation equipment on our older apparatus that have required emergency expenditures. And finally, off-the-shelf components. There's no proprietary hardware or suspension or drivetrain components. Most of this is available directly from the OEM manufacturers or from local stores like Napa. And again, a 5-year warranty. We're going to be purchasing this through HGAC Buy. It's very similar to the My Deal program. HGAC is the Houston Galveston Area Council. It's a nationwide program. It's a collective purchasing cooperative. Again, it's nationwide. There's over 120 member municipalities and governmental bodies here in the state of Michigan, including many of our comparables. Twice a year they go out for bid for all the heavy equipment vendors, including all the apparatus manufacturers. And we get the best price available plus a 15% discount on specification options. So the timeline, $820,000 purchase price. That includes a $10,000 discount with a 50% prepayment. This resolution also includes a 1% contingency provision for unforeseen changes. That's something we saw in a lot of other bid specifications. Midlands was 5% of the purchase price. We only included that because there's over 400 individual action items on the build sheet currently. So when one change is made during pre-construction, it may necessitate other purchases. Those would have to be personally approved by the city manager. And we're looking at a 13 to 14 month build time and about a 1-month training and outfitting timeline after that, after delivery. So we're looking at midwinter of 2020. And again, under full warranty for 5 years.
Madam Mayor, if I could, just to add to that, our fire department and the city of Port Huron, because we have an excellent fire department, we have an ISO rating, which is the insurance rating of a 3. There's multiple things. We just went through our ISO rating last year and maintained that 3. But it goes from everything from training records to manpower. And one of the key things is assets you have in your fleet, aerial capability, all that. If we did not have an aerial capability, we could see our ISO rating very easily go to a 4. So it's very important that we have this aerial capability to keep our ISO rating ISO very low. The reason for that is if you don't have a good ISO rating, your insurance costs will go up. There is a tax on the citizens for not having a well-trained and well-equipped fire department. It doesn't come through your tax bill, it comes through your insurance bill, through a higher bill because of your ISO ratings. We have lower insurance rates than surrounding municipalities because of our lower ISO rating. So this will help maintain our ISO rating. Also, from a financial perspective, we will pay the 50% down out of the motor pool fund, and then in our coming budget, we will actually budget the other half in our coming general fund. We actually may be able to stratify this over 2 more fiscal years because of the time we actually take possession and actually recognize the expense on our ledger in full.
So it give us the ability to spread it out
Correct.
over time. Okay.
Correct.
Any questions for the fire chief?
Chief, the HGAC guy, they're going to give us the $10,000 off the bat, right?
That's
the
linked to the
significant-
Sutphen Corporation's
Okay.
ledger ultimately, but yeah, we get that 10,000 right off the bat. It's off the total price.
Total price, okay.
Mayor Rep.
Yes.
Chief, during our presentation with you, you talked about the time we have the other truck off duty and how many times we had to have it repaired and how long it will take in the future to get parts. Just for the public, can you speak to that a little bit? So they have that understanding of whenever that truck is not operable, we cannot touch any of those buildings that you showed on the slide.
Right. As I spoke to the ground ladder situation, the other problem is they're complicated pieces of equipment. All the manufacturers have parts demands for new apparatus, which makes it difficult to source parts immediately for existing apparatus. In addition, our manufacturer is now part of a larger corporation that utilizes just-in-time delivery for parts much more than in the past. So we foresee that being a problem, getting specialized parts for this equipment.
Are the parts still available?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Mayor Rep, and also you mentioned, Chief, that, the mutual aid, the timing, how long will we have to, you don't even know if we didn't, if we don't purchase equipment, how long would it be for someone else to get here with that kind of equipment?
It would be the equivalent of stacking tolerances. So when a battalion chief who's in charge of the city as far as emergency operations recognizes that he requires assistance or the situation exceeds our capability, he has to request that mutual aid over the radio. That call has to be processed. The next department has to be toned out. They have to respond to their own buildings, get dressed, respond to the scene, arrive on scene, get their orders, and these minutes and seconds just add up and add up. Unfortunately, in a rescue situation or the ability to stop a fire from an offensive standpoint versus a defensive standpoint, that time lag will exceed our ability to operate.
And a whole lot of damage and lives could be lost in that block of time.
Potentially, yes.
Any other questions?
Madam Mayor, just a case file. One night I was at the office at a council meeting, and my wife called me and she said, "The neighbor's house is on fire. I see flames." And I watched the aerial ladder truck go down the road from right here. And by the time I got home, and I wasn't going too much over the speed limit, they were already on the roof with the ladder extended, making entry into that home. It's that kind of response times that keep our insurance rates low and keep our citizens safe.
That's true. Anything else?
Yeah, Mayor Rep.
Councilmember Warden.
I have a few things. A long time in my personal and professional is insurance. And not only is it going to be to have the right tools and response time to safely respond to protect to our city's buildings and property, it's also the locations of our fire stations so close, having the the fire stations in the positions that they are, and then also having your outstanding staff there to be able to respond. And we're very, very fortunate. There's not many cities out there that actually have a protection class 3. That is extremely low, and it's extremely beneficial for safety, but also for monetary cost of the homeowners and property owners and building owners. I want to thank you for, I did have a chance to meet with you and kind of go over kind of the specs of this thing beforehand. And you mentioned here you've been thinking about and kind of checking in on this for a year or 6 months or what time frame. And I guess I'm in full support of the need and for our city. We need to have this type of response to protect our building and our safety of our citizens and our property. Also having to depend on calling other cities for mutual aid to respond, it's very important that we have this type of ability to get there and to get up high enough to fight these fires. I just have a couple questions, or a couple comments or questions that I have that are not for you, just really actually for a city manager. So I don't know if you want me to take this after or now with the fire chief here, because I fully support this. I just have a couple questions before we make a decision on this. The motor vehicle, I think we met with you, we were kind of, land purchase fund or potentially how to fund this initial down payment, and when it came to the agenda, it's going to be purchased out of the motor vehicle fund. And one thing I do here as council, as we go through the different months and we do these purchases, I kind of keep, track of try to keep track of where we've been for purchases out of, the motor vehicle purchase. And fiscal year started July 1st, and since then, I think, we had purchase of a 2019 F-250. I think a couple of resolutions here were from the city manager. A $21,000 purchase in August, a $112,000 purchase out of the motor vehicle fund. In September, $14,400 purchase out of the motor vehicle fund. In September, a $58,500 purchase, and then in October we had a $380,000 purchase out of that motor vehicle fund. And just even the first meeting with the new council when they took oath there, I think there was a couple purchases there that, I guess it was presented to us, or hopefully to us, that it was going to be the final purchases out of for the fiscal year, and those were the two F1, the F-250 for $59,000. And when you have that, I'm thinking, okay, I kept track, and it was $646,000 basically year-to-date purchased out of the motor vehicle fund. And now in December, this is a need, but having it come out of the motor vehicle fund, I guess I just have a concern that this is now a $415,000 down payment out of that motor vehicle fund, which I think the budget was $700-some thousand, at least the documentation on that. And this puts it at $1,062,000 for purchases in this fiscal year of money coming out of the motor vehicle fund. So I'm just trying to figure out where this money, or how are we getting this into there for that budget, and now how far, is there a reason why it's coming out of the motor vehicle fund now, when just a month or so ago I guess you at least initiated that this is the last purchases we were going to have.
So correct. So what I meant the last meeting was this is the last purchase of our budgeted and planned expenses that we budgeted for last year. So I believe the budget amount was almost $750,000 out of the motor pool vehicle. That's your budgeted expenses, but that doesn't note your fund balance or your revenue. So the revenue in the motor pool fund is almost $2 million a year. Our fund equity, meaning the fund balance, which we will fund from this, is well north of, Ed, do you have the ballpark fund equity? $1.4 million. So we, in addition to the $750,000 of purchases, we actually have a fund balance of $1.4 million. Give it some change there, about $1.4 million, which we will use this money from the down payment. So you'll still be left with the fund equity of around $1 million after we pay for the down payment. The reason why fire trucks are not scheduled like regular vehicles is because a patrol car we place on a 36-month rotation, a DPW truck is on a 5 to 10-year rotation. A fire truck is a very different beast, meaning some can last 15 to 25 years, and so we do a gap analysis and an asset analysis of our fleet, which Chief Nicholson did when he took over for the last almost a year now. He's been working on this even before he became chief, working on this analysis. We come through with our decision, the verdict on what the assessment is, and we bring it to council above and beyond what our schedule is. Now, this is important because we are not going to get this truck till 2020. So we are making long-term strategic decisions in the motor vehicle fund. But again, the budgeted amount was $750,000. You properly noted we came in under budget on our budgeted amounts for the fleet vehicles this year. But this will be paid for out of fund equity, which is at full discretion of the mayor and council to spend how they deem fit. So that is the reason why we're taking on the motor pool fund. How the motor pool fund works is used like an enterprise fund. It charges equipment rental to all the various funds, which creates its revenue, which pays for the operation, depreciation, and replacement of expenses. That's actually dictated by accounting standards as well for the state. So that is how we run the enterprise fund, which is the motor pool fund.
So are we going to have, when this annual fiscal year gets done, are we going to have an adjustment there that shows, you know, for 400,000 or 300-some thousand over budget? Even though we have money in the fund and it's there to spend?
No, we will be amending the budget at the end of the
We're
year
gonna amend
to account for this expense, just as we have any unusual expenses
Okay.
that come up.
The money won't really be expended this year, it's just.
The 400,000?
Deposit,
Yeah,
putting the money on deposit.
right, okay.
It'll be in next year's budget.
We'll write a check, but it won't actually be essentially realized as an expense until we take possession.
Okay, yeah, so again, I just wanted some clarification, because as we try to follow these things, you know, this is a need, it's been worked, it's definitely been pre-planned, I think it's extremely necessary. It does have my full support, because I know the need in what we have, and I was just concerned if we're just going to have an amendment coming toward the end of the budget year to reflect this, then that's what I wanted to know, is what, because how many other purchases or potential purchases for the other divisions or potential needs out of the motor vehicle fund might be offended, you know, or might be affected by it going forward.
So there's a precedence for that. So we are very careful that all the regular replacement of fleet vehicles are scheduled out and a depreciated calendar. So patrol vehicles, DPW trucks, VAC trucks. A fire truck is a highly unusual purchase, and we have had essentially precedents from the previous years that we do a gap analysis and a needs assessment on fire truck purchases, because a patrol car costs about $25,000, not $820,000. And so it's much different than a GMC Chevy 2500 that costs us $22,000 versus $800,000. So because we're the fiduciary, we take extra time to assess the needs and analysis of a fire truck. We don't take almost $1 million purchase lightly. It's not something we do overnight. It requires more than a year of research and due diligence before we bring it to the council, above and beyond the typical motor vehicle fleet replacement.
Yeah.
But again, if you note in your audit, we have an extensive fund equity there to purchase this vehicle. There's a difference between the budgeted amounts for expenses and revenues and fund equity. Those are two different lines in the budget.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So again, as long as the other divisions there's not potential future purchases that they're hoping and anticipating that are going to be affected, we're going to be able to make this decision today, use the motor vehicle fund for this purchase, and if something comes up in the next 6 months for the other departments to purchase something, you're just going to have to bring it to us and say, hey, we need another amendment over budget, or?
No, they work for us. So we tell them when we're going to purchase their stuff.
Okay.
And they do that during the annual budget process.
Okay, so there's going to be no more. Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate that explanation, and Chief Nicholson, thank you very much for your time and putting this together, and you know, a lot of detail in the need, so appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Nicholson, as well. I will say, Chief Nicholson walked into my office with a binder this big of the specs, and I said, you don't honestly expect me to read that, because it was so big on this truck, that much research has gone into it. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. We will take a vote.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Rapp?
Yes. We'll move on to item 5 under from the city manager.
Accepting the quote from Cedar Hill Graphics LLC in the amount of $8,224 for the purchase and installation of 4 outdoor entrance signs to McMorran Place.
Is there a motion? So moved. Councilmember Ashford, is there a second?
Second.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald.
Madam Mayor, you have a memo from Nancy Windsor on the need. We just want to take a moment to thank Cedar Hill Graphics for going above and beyond. These have to be retrofitted. They were put in back in the 60s, and this should make McMorran look very nice. So thank you, Nancy.
Any questions from council?
Which one is it? Is this a picture of all of them? It says option B.
Correct.
Which one?
Depending on the set, it'll be all of them.
Oh, it will be all of them.
Yeah,
Okay,
depending on
option
that.
B,
Yep.
okay.
Anything else?
Mayor Rep,
Yes,
I
Councilman
know
Harris.
it's just kind of a layman's term looking at the language, but I looked in our agenda items on, I think it was on page 26, and it said on November 20th, 2018, the McMorran Commission met to approve this. And normally, the McMorran Commission meets on Wednesday mornings, and November 20th happens to be a Tuesday, and I just wondered if that was anything that would
Misprint.
change when it was done or not?
It's a typo.
Is it?
Yep.
All right, thank you.
You got me twice today, Ken.
Okay. Dang, I hate when I do that. Thank you.
Any other discussion? We'll take the vote.
Councilmember Warden,
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald,
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford,
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden,
Yes.
Councilmember Harris,
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton,
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
We'll move on to resolutions. Number 1.
Authorizing 15 payments.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, is there a second?
Support. You can take her support.
Councilmember Beeden.
No.
Any questions on the payments?
No, I don't have any questions, but we always want to call out, our change orders. I know we had 2 that were under the decrease, and we had 1 increase, and the difference was about $5,000 something dollars. So, we're keeping pace with our bills. When you go over it, we usually get, everything out of whack. But at the same time, we still have a lot of our payments that have been decreased, being mindful with the work. So I appreciate that.
It's one thing the auditors pointed out is we were able to keep our expenses in check.
Right.
And on these projects, we have city inspectors who are out there literally measuring gravel and asphalt to make sure that the citizens aren't getting ripped off.
Right. Thank you.
Mayor Rep,
Councilmember
I
Harris?
just wanted to commend the city clerk staff for this morning. I was down because I found a couple issues, and thanks to James and stuff, and I guess it just shows that, little attitude and little laughter sometimes. You correct a lot of things in a lot of hurry, but it was interesting. I found some things, and James found some more things, and everything's squared away, and hopefully we'll move on from there, so thank you.
We will take the vote.
Councilmember Archibald,
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford,
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden,
Yes.
Councilmember Harris,
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton,
Yes.
Councilmember Warden,
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes. Item 2.
Authorizing the purchase of a vacant lot at 3000 Dove Street for $125,000.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, is there a second?
Support.
Councilmember Pemberton.
Madam Mayor and Council, Jim, if you could throw the map up on the screen, appreciate it. Mayor and Council, before you have a property which we actually did own up until 2011. We had sold this property to, at that time it was Chassis Automotive, who were looking at doing a potential expansion. That expansion did not come to fruition. So it is key to the city of Port Huron to get this land back into our assembled property. You can see here that this will give us well north of 10 acres, almost 15 acres of a square lot. We are landlocked in the city of Port Huron, so when we go out and try to acquire manufacturing facilities, they oftentimes want at least 15 to 20 acres, and we don't really have much of that. And so this is our best shot at able to bring new factories and new projects and new jobs to the city of Port Huron. And so we sold it to Chassis in 2011 for $60,000, and tonight we'll be able to buy it back for a markup, which is, it's been quite a few years, so they've had to pay taxes on it and maintenance for that amount of time, so I don't blame them for trying to get their cost out. To get that back into our available property that we can market through the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, through the EDA. We do have some suitors who are looking at that property for potential projects. Whether any of those come to fruition, it's key that we have this so when, we have people in our industrial park who are always looking at expanding, and we need to have land available for them to protect those jobs. We have had issues in the past that had we not had expansion of land available, they would take the current plant and merge it or move it with another plant somewhere else in the country. And so not only is this about creating new jobs, it's about protecting the jobs we have. This purchase will come out of the land purchase fund.
Is there any questions?
Yeah, Mayor Rep, just an overall question, not so much on this, but, so our hopes are, this is all zone industrial, correct?
Correct.
And so our goal is to kind of acquire all this at some point in time?
It's a long-term goal. It's one of the things where we have property here that we can assemble, so we have, 10 to 15 acres, but as a long-term goal, as those properties become available, that we would acquire them. And the reason for that is this location, the industrial park, has capacity, utility capacity, heavy power. That's actually a thing, heavy power, don't know, maybe explain it. Heavy power, water and sewer capabilities to handle the industrial load there. Whereas some parts of our city, you just can't dump a factory anywhere because the water, sewer, and electric capability aren't there. So this location is key to the industrial park expansion. But at the same time, that is an area of rich heritage, and a lot of people have lived there for multi-generations. And so if they want to sell, they sell. If not, they're there until they're ready.
Yeah, and so, so we still have that.
Correct.
That covered for them, that, we can't take it from them anyway if they want to
No.
sit there till whatever.
Nope.
That's their property, right?
Correct.
All right.
In fact, we visited one of them last year, and the guy walked out to my car and said, "No need even getting out of your car." I said, "Okay, have a nice day." So, yeah, we're okay with that.
All right.
Is there any other questions?
Rob, sorry.
Did you have a question?
I do.
Are you just choking?
I'm choking and I have a question. James, do we know what the holding cost would have been for us from 2011 to 2018 on this property had we not sold it?
For us, none. It's a wooded lot. We don't mow it.
We
don't
have
pay
had no cost holding on to it for all that time.
We wouldn't have, correct.
Thank
Because
you.
we don't pay taxes on it.
But they have.
Yeah, oh yeah.
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 Going to say, yes,
know
they
what-
would have had.
Do you know what that amount was for them?
I don't. I will tell you, I've been negotiating this. David Haynes has been negotiating this for the last month or so. This is their price. My fear is if we don't buy it back, some speculator will buy it and then hold it hostage. That is always my fear with land around the industrial park, when people know. So if we don't buy it, so say we have 9.5 acres and I have a major project gets announced, somebody will buy that property for $125,000 when they know we need it. They'll say it's $1 million now, and that's happened to us. And so it's important to get those properties available, to lock them in when we can, so can we use those to negotiate to get jobs here. But we have had that happen to us.
Well, you just did it to them. Okay,
Not to that
what's
degree.
Good for the goose is good for the gander, all right? Okay.
Any other questions? I do agree that it is important to get this land when we can, because I know from over the years that if you don't have the land available and somebody comes and they want to locate here, it does make a difference, a big difference. So,
Mayor,
Councilmember Warden.
yeah, just, again, I agree with the intent, there to assemble and try to grab a parcel like this, and commend you for the, trying to sway them to sell it back to the city, apparently. I just have a hard time that it's, and I appreciate you sharing that, because that was one of my questions of what, if the city ever owned it before, and how long ago, which you appreciate and let me know, and then what did we sell it for? And we sold that parcel for $60,000 is what you mentioned. To have it, we have to, okay, to purchase it back for double plus some is just a little too rich for me. I don't know at this time if there's any way to still try to negotiate something more reasonable. That's my concern. Taxpayer money, got $60,000 for it, and now we're paying $125 for a wooded lot, because the city, we, over the years, have acquired these other parcels from people as they popped up. I just don't know, doesn't kind of sit right with me.
Well, to that I will say that this is on par, about $25,000 an acre. This is on par with what we've been purchasing property all around the industrial park for. So this is fair market value. It's not just like any other acre we bought. It's 5 acres in a square on a A-class road. So, I mean, it's a comparison to what we've paid. It is a fair price. We've set the standard. We've set the market ourselves, to be quite frank, for what we've paid for all these other properties. So it is on par with the square footage and acreage price. And yeah, David did some research on that question. Dave, why don't you speak to that?
Mayor Rapp, when he's coming up, James, can you refresh my memory? Do we not typically have a buyback clause, and we did it in this case, but the previous city manager let it lapse?
Correct. We did have a clawback clause, and it did expire before I got here.
Thank you.
The current valuation by our assessor on the property is $124,000. But at the same time, of course, in talking with Chasix, we wanted to verify that not only, that was our price for the land in our community, but we also examined industrial property in Marysville and in St. Clair, and they are also in a line with $20,000, $25,000 an acre. So that is the going rate right now, especially on multiple acreage in industrial parks served by utilities in close proximity to expressways.
Did you say the current assessment for the last couple of years by a city assessor on Chasix was $124,000?
Our land value on our current assessment sheet is $124,000.
So that's what half of that is what they've been paying the property tax on?
Correct. So it'd be difficult for us to tax them at a price we're unwilling to pay, I would say.
Well, we probably sold it at a time to them where property was worth a whole lot less.
We were just coming out of the recession, and yeah, it was a different time.
Yeah. Unfortunately. We'll take the vote.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes. Item 3.
Approving the creation of the Water System Advisory Council.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Councilmember Ashford, is there a second?
Support.
Councilmember Beeden, do you want to explain
Yeah.
what this is?
Madam Mayor and Council, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality enacted administrative rule changes to their Michigan Safe Drinking Water Act, and it requires us now to make a Water System Advisory Council, which will help inform the public on the quality of water, whether that be lead, PFAS, or anything like that. It essentially serves as a communication arm to help people better understand the quality of their water. It is part of the new lead rule standards.
Mayor Rep.
Yes, Councilmember Ashford.
Yes, it's second one. Whereas each water supply that serves a population of 50,000 or more, aren't we 28,000?
Excellent question. Our population in the city of Port Huron is right around 30,000, 29, 30,000. However, we are the producer of water for Fort Gratiot.
So you're factoring them into
We're
your
legally obligated to.
population.
So Fort Gratiot, Port Huron Township, Kimball, and parts of Clyde, we are their producer of water. So we serve a population of more than 50,000.
Okay, so is this kind of misleading? You wouldn't want to cover that with some more language?
No, it's required for
It's
this
just
one.
required just
This
for
is the language required,
this
yep.
is- All right.
Yep, per our permit.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mayor Rep.
Councilmember Warden.
Just again, creation of this is the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. The wording and the setup of this, do they give some guidelines of what actually this committee has to do?
This is straight out of their language.
Okay, and then as far as I think the next thing we're doing is, appointing some people to this. This commission here is going to be a separate group that meets on behalf and reports back to us, or reports back to you?
No, they actually have no statutory powers of governance in any way. This just serves as, again, a governing body to bring public awareness to the water quality. Annual water reports, information the public needs to know.
Are they going to be responsible for sending notices out and monitoring?
We're required under permit to do that.
Okay.
We are not forfeiting any of our statutory obligations or required under our permit with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources.
Okay. And the people that, again, I think it's the next resolution, but those people have stepped forward and already said yes to.
I'll speak about the next one. This needs to be taken individually.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. This will be interesting to see what they do. I think they have to meet not until next year, right? The first meeting? It's October 8th of 2019.
They have to be appointed and then they don't meet until October?
Correct.
That's,
Okay, that's a long time.
That's a pretty light schedule.
You always say so.
So are we just going to have direction from the State Department, or whoever is doing this, if they want to force changes to have them meet more often or whatever. This is something that we're going to react to and have to create.
Pretty much.
This is, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? We'll take the vote.
Councilmember Beeden? Yes. Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes. Item 4, please.
Confirming the city manager's appointment of Norm Huron, Keely Baraboo, and Greg Randall to the Water System Advisory Council with terms to expire December 10th, 2022, and the appointment of Dan Duman and Jason Hyde with terms to expire December 10th, 2021.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, is there a second?
Support.
Councilmember Beeden.
Madam Mayor, Eric Witter and I, Director of Public Works Eric Witter and I met with all the township supervisors, and we actually met with their utility supervisor, their DPW director, whatever the equivalents were. We are not required to give seats on this commission to other jurisdictions. We could appoint it to all Port Huron people, which is something we've discussed if that's what we wanted to do. However, we felt to be fair, if you're in Fort Gratiot drinking water and there's a public advisory council, I want somebody from Fort Gratiot there telling me what's going on. And we felt it was in the good collaborative spirit to put a representative from each jurisdiction we serve. Kimball Township will represent not only Kimball, but they also serve parts of Clyde through us. Also, Keely Baraboo works for Port Huron area schools. We have literally thousands of school children who drink our water on a daily basis, and we want to make sure that Port Huron schools have a seat at the table as well to know what we're serving their residents. So this board shows a regional collaboration, which is not legally required, that we sat down for and reached out to them. And so I appreciate the township supervisors giving their subordinates permission. These are experts. These are either their directors, their DPW employees, or their plant supervisors. So we really wanted people who could read those reports and understand and get that information to their citizens.
Thank you. Any questions on that?
No, just a comment. I like the diversity of that, how everybody is inclusive.
I just have, oh, sorry, Mayor Rep.
Go ahead.
As far as, the responsibility of, trying to communicate or get, giving feedback of communicating this out to the public or more awareness, I think as I read this, is there going to be, if there's mailings or some type of communication, is that something that the city of Port Huron we're going to have to budget for in the future? For their expenditures?
We already do certain mailings and reports on an annual basis with our DPW. We do a DPW mailing once a year. We could incorporate information that's something for the commission to decide if they're going to be mailing their residents. It's something they can do. That's the reason why we put all these different representatives on there for those issues to come.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor Rep.
Yes, Councilmember Harris.
Just one comment. Noticing that Keely Baraboo has already been appointed to the Port Huron Housing Commission on the consent agenda, and I look at her appointment on this new committee, and I looked at some of our past city council members who would probably appreciate a position like this, and also city engineer Bob Clegg. I think Bob Clegg would be, taking nothing away from Keely Baraboo, but I think Bob Clegg would be a perfect addition to this advisory council. And I guess, we talk about diversity, and diversity isn't always the color of the skin or anything else like that. And I think this just would have been a good chance to put Mr. Clegg in a position that we would have some leadership, but with all respect, so.
I've spoken with Bob Clegg in the last 6 months, and I think he'll tell you he's enjoying his retirement.
He is on Zoning Board of Appeals, too.
He is on Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yeah.
Again, we want to make sure that we reach the most amount of our populations who are drinking our water. We have school children from all around the region coming to the city of Port Huron drinking their water. Those kids who don't often live in Port Huron but come to Port Huron and drink, they need to have a seat at the table.
This was who the school district wanted as their representative then.
We saw her out because she's the public information officer
for the school district.
Yep.
Yeah. There's no other discussion. We will take the vote.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden? Yes. Mayor Rep.
Yes. Item 5.
Adopting a revised schedule of fees effective January 1st, 2019 for various sections of the Code of Ordinances and other user-specific fees.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, is there a second?
Support.
Councilmember Pemberton.
Madam Mayor, in your packet, you will see that no fees have increased this year. The fire department fees that you see there in red are actually not new fees. Those are fees that are spelled out in our city ordinances, but they were never actually on the fee chart. Although those are actual fees that are already there, they're not being changed, they're not being increased, but we felt out of transparency, we should list those as well on the schedule of fees in case people have a question. So those are not new fees, it's just the first time we decided to pull them out of the ordinances and bullet point them out as well so people know that in advance. But they are not increased, they are not new.
Yeah, I noticed there were no new additions on there. Any questions?
Mayor Rep, I think
Councilmember Warden.
that's why I pulled it from the consent agenda. My question was, I thought, we already had, for some of the service fees for the fire department going out to, some fees after a certain amount of time, and that was my question, that this is now, the only thing that's added is, and again, these numbers and these dollar amounts you're saying are the exact same as what's in the ordinance right now?
Correct.
Okay. I appreciate that.
It's just hard for people to read an ordinance sometimes. We just wanted to simplify it for people.
In one document. Is there any other discussion? We'll take the vote.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Rapp?
Yes. We'll go to item 9.
Authorizing the submission of a grant application to the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Legacy Funds in the amount of $25,000 to assist with the construction of a running track and related park amenities within Knoxfield Park.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Councilmember Ashford, is there a
Support.
second? Councilmember Warden.
Madam Mayor, we wanted to take this and not put it on consent to let you guys know that, so at the Knox Park, we already have a private donor who stepped up. We've also mentioned to the residents of that region that we would like to match that as well through our Parks Fund. But this is a grant opportunity that opened up, and we didn't want to miss the opportunity to leverage the private donations and city dollars if we can capture this grant. So this is a kind of a Hail Mary short notice. Let's ask, if we can do it, we can, so we never want to miss up an opportunity. Nancy Windsor, our Parks Director, has held, I believe, 2 community roundtables with the residents surrounding Knoxfield. They did brainstorming sessions, and they really came up with a good plan to enhance Knoxfield, and we really want to find the funding to make all their goals come to reality. So Nancy, thank you for keeping an eye on the old grant faucet, and whenever it comes out, we apply for it. So we'll hopefully get an answer soon.
Do you know what the deadline is that we'll find out?
What's the deadline? January 11th.
January. Okay. If there's no questions, we will take the vote.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Mayor Rapp?
Yes. We'll move on to ordinances. Number 1, please.
Second reading and enactment, an ordinance to amend Chapter 36, Parks and Recreation, Article 1, General, of the Port Huron Code of Ordinances for the purpose of establishing consistent closing hours for all city parks and pool premises.
Before I ask for a motion, as we did have a lengthy discussion about it, and the city manager has suggested that we not act upon this at this time. It was given its first reading, but I believe the proper motion should be to postpone it indefinitely until such time as the manager comes back with a proposed change or something, so before you do.
Madam Mayor, I spoke with the clerk today, and what I would prefer is the question, there's a reason why we have 2 readings, is to identify concerns and issues that may come up. Many of you brought up valid concerns and valid issues. To be frank, we didn't have good enough answers for you. And so I would ask that you vote to reject this tonight, and we will try again in January and February with better language. We want to take some more time to get the community input to better understand what the needs are of those various parks. And so either postpone or reject it, but the concerns we brought, there's a reason why we have processes for changing ordinances. It's not easy. It takes 2 readings so people have time to realize when it's not good. And it just wasn't good language. And so we'll try again.
So it will be completely changed then, because you can't bring it back, and if you reject it, it can't come back in its present form.
It'll be changed
It would
significantly.
have to be changed.
Correct. Yep.
Just so you know and understand that.
So do you want a motion to reject or postpone indefinitely?
Well, what you should do is just make a motion to adopt it, and then we'll all vote accordingly. I don't think you're going to do a negative motion.
Again, I'll say I appreciate your candid comments and concerns last time. I mean, it did help.
Oh, no,
I mean, rather than making a negative
oh, no,
motion,
Robert,
you should
I
make
meant,
the
did you want us
motion
to motion so we can
bring it on
reject,
the floor,
or do you
and then
want
we'll
it to
reject it.
postpone?
if
Yes.
you're not going to do the postpone
Yes.
or the thing, then you
But the
go
only
that
thing
way.
is you can't
Correct.
bring it back in its present form.
No.
Correct.
If you do it that way. And definitely would have allowed you to just make some tweaks to it and bring it back.
We're going to change it
Completely change
significantly.
it. Yes.
Mayor Rapp,
Yes.
just to clarify, I was
We don't have a
listening.
motion on the floor, though, yet, so.
Right, and
so
I
we
just,
need
as
to
we're
do that
talking
before
about,
we I was just bringing up, we do need to make a different motion, but we can go back to the original one and reject it if that's
And
what we're going to do.
there was a question or something brought up about tabled. There was another one about rejecting it, and there's another one about postponing indefinitely, and then also potentially putting it on the table and see how it lands. Is that what I've heard here so far?
That's correct.
And-
If you table an item, it goes on the table with no discussion, and it automatically, if it's not taken off the table at the next meeting, it just
And
dies.
that's what I researched. So is that what you're suggesting?
No,
No.
no, we're suggesting that a motion be to bring it to the floor, and then we just vote accordingly, and we vote no on it then.
Mayor Rapp, I motion we bring it to the floor.
Support. Okay, so we have it on the floor, and then we can discuss it if we want to, or we just vote for it. If there's no discussion.
Mayor Rapp?
Yes, Councilman.
I definitely would like to add some discussion. There was an incredible amount of feedback from all parts regarding the different, having the parks close at potentially 9 o'clock, from the south side to the Pine Grove Park softball games, to fishing, to access in the summer, and hopefully this is, in this current form, absolutely not going to be able to support this at all. And I strongly suggest that we maybe look into, if they bring it back, something more seasonal, if they're going to have some later hours. And I did want to also mention that other parks I looked up in preparation for this, City of Marysville, is their code is open from sunrise to midnight. Also, even like the state park as well, is open till 10 o'clock. So hopefully we can put a lot of more feedback and energy into this before you bring it back with a brand-new ordinance for first reading.
Thank you. Anything else?
Call for the question.
Yep. We'll take the vote.
Councilmember Archibald?
No.
Councilmember Ashford?
No.
Councilmember Beeden?
No.
Councilmember Harris?
No.
Councilmember Pemberton?
No.
Councilmember Warden?
No.
Mayor Rapp?
No. No. I think everybody agrees it needs to be changed. We'll move on to ordinance number 2.
First reading, an ordinance to amend Chapter 52 zoning, Article 3, District Regulations, Division 1 generally, Section 52-162 map of the Port Huron Code of Ordinances to rezone the property generally described as 1912 vacant lot 24th Street from an R1 zoning district to an M1 zoning district.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Councilmember Ashford, is there a second?
Support?
Councilmember Pemberton.
Madam Mayor and Council, this is to accommodate the expansion for Blue Water Rescue Mission and the great work that they do. Our Planning Commission believes that this is very reasonable and doable without harming the area, and so that is what it's regarding. Thank you, Arnie, to you and Debbie, and the amazing work you and your team do.
That's good. Any discussion? Yes.
I
Councilmember
understand this has to do with providing parking and storage area and stuff for the residents at the facility. And I guess my only concern is using Bancroft Street quite often for a bypass to get away from that train on 16th Street, that it's a very, very difficult street to get out on 24th Street because of the traffic, the speed, and the volume and stuff. And I just hope that we help in the planning and stuff so we can get people in and out of there, because it's kind of a blind curve because you got people coming up from the viaduct, and it's an issue. So I really think that we have no problem with this, but let's just make sure we do it right. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Mayor Rapp,
Councilmember Warden.
Reverend Kuntz, appreciate your effort on this and going through the process. I just saw somewhere in the notes, and again, this is initially at least to get it rezoned and then potentially for parking, but didn't you previously have, or is there any potential future plans for building an expansion there? Will this still allow that to happen if that does come through on this parcel, if we change
That's
it?
the whole point of this.
Huh?
That's what we're doing.
What's that?
That's what we're doing.
For this section?
Correct.
You're changing it to M?
It's for the expansion of the facility.
Right. And he just has an addition on there for bathrooms.
Yeah, that's the expansion. It will count for if they want any more bed space in the future.
Yes. And then the parking area, this is for parking lot, so he'll be able to switch that?
It'll be
If he wants
attached to their
to.
current facility if they expand.
Pardon me?
It'll be attached to their current facility if they expand.
Okay. So you're not going to use that other parcel for a building, you're just going to be, okay. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there no other questions? We will take the vote.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Mayor Rapp?
Yes, that concludes our regular agenda. I do have a couple of announcements, but before I do, I'm going to ask the city manager if you'd please give us a quick update on the LEAF pickup program, please.
Absolutely, thank you. Our LEAF program continues, and you have my solemn word. We will keep picking up leaves until every pile is picked up and every home is picked up. The LEAF, MTAR is doing an excellent job. In the last week, they have almost doubled the ground they made in the previous 3 weeks because the leaves are drying out. They can now suck them up. I've seen some people complain, well, they're using snow shovels and not rakes. That's because the leaves are now a mush and they're frozen wet to the ground, so the way to break up those piles is snow shovels. I actually got a little nervous because I heard a few complaints, so I actually reached out to every city manager in the state of Michigan, and I can report that about 15 communities in our region are more than 2 weeks behind now. The city of Pierre, who are closest, in the path of the wind and snow, is also more than a week and a half, 2 weeks behind because of the weather. This is not because our new provider didn't have the equipment or was bit off more than they can chew. It's because we've had unusual precipitation. But they are continuing, and they will continue until every pile is picked up. And if you feel that you've been missed, call us up. We'll put you on the list. But no leaf is safe with us on duty.
Thank you very much.
We're still picking up bags, too?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. I have noticed a marked improvement in the past week.
Yeah,
A lot of the areas.
5 days of dry weather really did help us.
Okay, we also have city offices will be closed December 24th, 25th, 31st, and January the 1st in observance of the holidays. And a couple other announcements. We did have several appointments on commissions tonight. We have one other appointment that's vacant, and it's the Planning Commission, and it is a mayor's appointment with council approval. I would like to encourage people to apply if they have the desire to do so, and we do have one vacancy right now, and we received in the past year, maybe 3 applicants. But I would like to see more to choose from and make a recommendation to the council for someone in January. So if you're interested in applying for that commission, please look it up online, and you can get a boards and commissions application online or inquire in the clerk's office. And the other thing is goals session. We need to schedule a time for our goals session. So for the council members, I'm looking at the week of February the 18th. If you would check your calendars, and then perhaps you can get back with Cindy and let her know, and then we can put a notice out when we get enough people that can get together on a day. Usually we try to meet on Monday, so that Monday I think is the 18th of February. It's in between our council meetings in February, so if you'll check your calendars and let the city clerk know, and then we can move forward with that. And then James can get forward with sending us out material on that in the first of the year. That works for you.
Yes, I will send out a goal status update.
That would be nice, yes. And then with that being said, and with the offices being closed, and this is our last meeting of 2018, so I would like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I hope you all get an opportunity to enjoy time with your families and have a safe holiday. And if there's anything else that anyone would like to bring forward?
Yeah, Mayor Rep, I usually would give a transit report, but I gave it later in the year. So the two new people that we have, I have the secretary putting something together, a little orientation, little booklet for them. And then also, I think the new alternate Harris, they've already contacted you, correct?
Yep.
So we're all set. And again, I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Is there,
Mayor Rep.
yes, Councilmember Harris?
Just one comment. A thing kind of stood out to me tonight just before I come to the meeting here. And anybody knows that currently the state legislature is on a lame duck session right now. And there's a lot of things that are critical to what's going on in Port Huron and across the state and stuff. And my understanding this afternoon with, and I'm trying to remember the gentleman's name that does all the good reporting out of Washington, but there's the governor's bill on tipping fees for waste and stuff is up there, and the governor has another legislation part for the water fee and stuff, which is up there. And according to this legislative reporter, that both of these votes are up for sale, and he's willing to trade that for some other legislation. So I advise you, James has made some comments about, I think it's 1129 and stuff, and I really endorse you. I didn't bring the number with me tonight, but get the governor's phone number, give him a call tomorrow. Don't email him, call him the office and stuff, and let him know how you feel. We don't need a tipping fee for our waste. We don't need another water fee that's going to go to the state. It's not going to benefit us. It kind of teased me off that this is a holiday and they're trying to do this to us, but be aware. We've only got 6 days, 6 legislative days to stop this roll. So,
Madam Mayor, I will be in Lansing for the next 2 days lobbying on a host of bills with the Michigan Municipal League, specifically 1129, the tipping fees on there. There's another trash collection bill they have on there as well. There's a water main issue on there as well. So there's a whole host of issues. So I will be spending the next 2 days at the state daycare facility for the juvenile antics of lame duck. So.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything to say? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved.
Meeting adjourned.